What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here as always on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade JJ Williams, and today is the first of the month, so it's a new month, and not necessarily a new theme, though. This month, we're going to revisit a theme that we began our year with, and we're going to go back to the filmography of Tom Hanks, starting with his very first role in a feature film ever. 1980's He Knows You're Alone, starring Dan Scardino, Caitlin O'Haney, Elizabeth Kemp, Tom Rolfing, Louis Arlt, Patsy Pease, James Rebhorn, Dana Barron, and Tom Hanks. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here once again for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. Like I said during the introduction, we're going back to the beginning. We're going back to the theme that kicked off the relaunch of Renegades Reviews, Tom Hanks Month. Now, you're probably wondering why I went back to the well. Well, I was going to do another featured actor-actress for this month. And rather than starting something different, I figured there was still so much meat left on the Tom Hanks bone that it would be perfect to revisit him. Plus, he has a horror movie, which we're going to discuss today, He Knows You're Alone. That was his very first role. So in being his first role, not a major part for him. He has a couple of scenes, but then he's also got a Christmas film, Polar Express. So I figured those were great ways to bookend the Tom Hanks month, since we're just coming out of classic, pre-1970s horror films. Here's one from 1980 to kind of bridge into Tom Hanks month. We're still talking about a horror film. And then in December, obviously, we're going to be talking about a lot of Christmas films. So the best way to segue right into that is to discuss The Polar Express, a Tom Hanks Christmas film. It just really worked out. But enough about that. Let's get into Tom Hanks's very first feature film role. Now, keep in mind, this was filmed in 1979. And it premiered in August of 1980, just a couple months before Bosom Buddies would hit the TV waves. So it kind of gives you an idea where in Tom Hanks's, life and his career this falls. This is before Bosom Buddies. So keep that in mind. Now, as our movie opens, a young bride is murdered on her wedding day by Ray Carlton, who is a man that the bride rejected for her current fiancé, Len Gamble, a detective. Several years later, on Long Island, a young bride-to-be named Marie is stabbed to death in a movie theater, while her friend, Ruthie, sits beside her. Marie's killer, Ray Carlton, then disappears into the night. The next morning, Ray arrives in Staten Island, where he witnesses university student Amy Jensen from a distance as she is preparing for her wedding. She sees her fiancé, Phil, and his friends as they take off and head out of town for his bachelor party. After attending a ballet class with her friends, Nancy and Joyce, the three ladies run into their philosophy professor, Carl, with whom Joyce is having an affair. Amy leaves to go to a dress fitting, but stops to get ice cream on the way, where she notices that a man is following her. Outside of the ice cream shop, Amy is startled by Marvin, her ex-boyfriend, who is on a break from his job at the local morgue. Amy stops by the dress shop for her fitting, and unbeknownst to her, the dressmaker is stabbed to death as she leaves by Ray with a pair of scissors. Later that night, Nancy and Joyce surprise Amy at her home with a small bachelorette party. Her parents are gone for the weekend, leaving Amy in charge of her kid sister, Diane. Joyce leaves the party for Carl's house, where the two begin to have sex until the power inexplicably goes out. Carl goes to check on the electrical box, and when he returns, he is stabbed to death by the killer with a kitchen knife after finding Joyce's lifeless body in the bed. The following morning, Marvin arrives at Amy's house and expresses to her that he wants to rekindle their relationship. Amy then begins to express second thoughts over her pending marriage to Phil. While in the kitchen, Amy sees the mysterious man standing in her yard and becomes frightened. She invites Marvin to come to a local amusement park with her, Nancy, and Diane, but he declines due to the fact that he has a shift at the morgue that evening. Meanwhile, the police find the dressmaker's body at the shop, and detectives Frank Daly and Len Gamble arrive on the scene to investigate. Later, Amy and Nancy meet a student named Elliot, which is Tom Hanks's character, while they are jogging through a forest trail. They later attend the amusement park with Elliot, and he begins to question Amy's claims of a man following her. While riding a dark ride with her sister, Amy sees Ray inside of the ride and confides in Nancy at her house that night. Amy briefly leaves to take her sister to a birthday party, leaving Nancy alone at the house. After a shower, Nancy puts on a record and lies down in the living room to smoke a joint. Moments later, she has her throat slashed by Ray. Amy returns and is attacked by Ray after discovering Nancy's severed head in the fish tank. She rushes outside to her car and struggles to drive with Ray on the roof of the car. She ends up crashing the car into a wooded area and runs to the nearby morgue, and Detective Gamble arrives as well. Ray chases Amy through a tunnel system in the morgue's basement, and when confronted by Detective Gamble, Ray stabs him in the heart after he gets shot in his left shoulder. Nevertheless, Ray continues to pursue Amy. Amy manages to trap the wounded Ray inside of a storage closet and escapes from the basement with Marvin. The two flee outside as the police arrive and enter the morgue. Later, Marvin and Amy are to be married, implying that she cut off her engagement to Phil. And as Amy sits in front of a mirror in her wedding dress, an unseen person enters the room. She stands, approaches the individual, and says, "Phil, what are you doing here?" before screaming in horror as our movie ends. I actually enjoyed this film a little bit more than I was expecting to. For an early 80s, low-budget horror film, I thought it was well told. It obviously was heavily inspired by Halloween. There were several similarities throughout the film that I could see and pick up on. What I really enjoyed, though, was the fact that Ray, upset at being pushed to the side for Detective Gamble, pretty much kind of went on this rampage, killing all these brides-to-be. And then he eventually gets his revenge on Gamble before Amy is able to subdue him and capture him. And then the movie ends with Phil, the man who Amy pushed to the side, basically about to repeat the process, because it's implied that he is there to kill Amy on her wedding day, much like Ray did at the start of the film. I just really enjoyed the full circle, of the storytelling here. And yeah, I was kind of bummed that Tom Hanks didn't have a bigger role. But again, this is his very first feature film. Came out, like I said at the beginning, just a couple months before Bosom Buddies hit the airwaves, which obviously was the beginning of his rise to stardom. Him and Peter Scolari, rest in peace, Peter Scolari, who passed away about a week ago, maybe a week and a half at this point. But it was just really good storytelling. And then its legacy endures, because if you think about Scream 2 and the kill in the very beginning of that, where Ghostface kills in the movie theater, is very much lifted straight out of the beginning of this film. And the first kill after Ray gets revenge on the girl that pushed him to the side. So not only was this film inspired by Halloween, obviously, but then it inspired Wes Craven to take that kill and put it into Scream 2. And a lot of people wouldn't know about that kill unless they've seen this film. It's very, very cool how things go hand in hand and come full circle. When it comes to my rating of this film, I'm not going to give it super high marks. It's a little bit out there for me. I did enjoy the storytelling. I did enjoy the acting. I did enjoy the full circle of it. I would watch it again. I own it on my Vudu. That's how I purchased it, so I could be able to watch this film. I didn't have a chance to get a physical copy. Maybe I'll try to seek one out in the future. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars. I don't feel that's super duper high, but I don't feel like it's super duper low. I feel like it's right in the middle there, kind of where it deserves to be, especially since we're reviewing Tom Hanks films right now, and his role wasn't huge, but it was significant. It did have a purpose. I thought he did an amazing job. You could definitely see some of the boyish charm that would come out a little bit more in future films. But 3.5 out of 5 stars for this film that I'd never even really heard of until I started digging deeper into Tom Hanks's filmography for films to cover for the second go round. I didn't know about this film. Well, I knew about it, but I didn't know about it like in depth when we did the first month. That's why this first week of Tom Hanks films are basically going to be all old films that I either didn't really know about or just didn't have access to when we did it the first time. After the first week, we're basically going to pick up where we left off going forward in his filmography post The Terminal. But I digress. 3.5 out of 5 stars. He Knows You're Alone. I did enjoy it. I have no problems watching it again. I highly recommend that Tom Hanks fans seek this film out and watch it. And if you're a fan of 80s horror, I also recommend that you seek this film out and give it a look. Make sure you guys get out there on the social media. Let me know what you think about this film. If you're watching the premiere, leave your thoughts and comments over here. If you're watching on demand later in the day, leave your thoughts and comments down here. And when you get out there on your social media platforms, let's try to get those hashtags trending. Hashtag Casa D18 Studios, hashtag Renegades Reviews, hashtag Renegade Returns, and of course, the ever popular hashtag Shenanigans. We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag Statboy Approved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today. Make sure you guys tune in tomorrow, right back here on the Casa D18 Studios channel, for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, when we take a look at Tom Hanks's first starring role in a motion picture, the 1982 made-for-TV film Mazes and Monsters, starring, of course, Tom Hanks, along with Wendy Crewson, David Wysocki, Chris Makepeace, Lloyd Bachner, Peter Donnet, Anne Francis, Murray Hamilton, and Vera Miles. You're not going to miss out on that one tomorrow. Right back here on the Casa D18 Studios channel. Right back here on another all-new Renegades Reviews, when we take a look at Tom Hanks's first starring film. To all my loyal fans and viewers out there tuning in for the premiere, leaving your thoughts and comments over here, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Likewise, all my loyal fans and viewers out there tune in a little bit later in the day, watching on demand, leaving your thoughts and comments down here. Thank you very much. I appreciate each and every one of you. I appreciate all my loyal fans and viewers. Tune in on a regular basis. Show me that love. Show me that support. Going back to the archives, digging up all those old classic episodes from the Casa D18 Studios channel in an effort to help boost up my viewership hours so I can eventually get monetized, maybe make a few bucks on this endeavor. Thank you very much to each and every one of you who tuned in today, and I will see you guys next time.